Would you say that creating music makes you feel closer to the past or closer to the future, do you think?
I think it's a tough question. So I would say this neither, because it happens in the moment. So you're composing things in the present, but with the knowing of all years before, all you did before, every track you composed before um, um, has an impact of the present composition. So I think there's no no intention to copy something from the past, and it would be too brave to say that, for me at least, that I would say I would compose music for the future.
But I think making an album, well, also has to do with projecting into the future, because you're thinking of a finished album which will be in the future. And because we didn't really have the chance to play many concerts during this pandemic time, and which was pretty much the production of the album, it's feeling really good now to play music in a concert for people in the moment, because constantly projecting into the future is also kind of exhausting.
Do you feel like, is it the same feeling when you're creating music and you're very much present in the moment and when you're performing on stage and you're in the moment? Or is there a slight difference there in terms of being present? Does it feel different in any way, that sensation?
So concerts are in bundle or compilation of tracks from the past, from older albums, and from the present album. So we have, out of a perspective from respect, we are giving ourselves no so much space inside music from the past. So we're playing the music as it is, because it would be strange to change so many melodies in existing compositions. In our music, we try to, we have more freedom to create it out of the moment and change things a little bit. And the freedom, the absolutely freedom, begins at the end of every concert, because we play a thing we call session. It's something about a real composition and a improvisation, and there we agree on a root note and a fixed tempo. The root note only on it starts on the root note, but we have no. Sometimes it ends in a different key, but so we ending the concert in 30 minutes, sometimes 60 minutes, something around this, of completely new music composed in the moment, including it is impact by the environment. The building changes a lot every time. The audience, the people involved, even in the audience, have an impact on the things we're playing.
The audience, in terms of the way that they're reacting to it,
Yeah.
it's like a conversation, it's kind of back and forth. Is that a similar thing in the studio when you're working together? Does it feel like a conversation with each other when you're creating?
Definitely. I think you said something alike lately, that, I mean, when you make music with other people in a room, you can't avoid to try and hear it with their ears as well. So I think what we're all doing is trying to hear what the other would hear, the way we know each other. So it makes a big difference. Like, personally, I feel like my ideas change a lot when I'm with those great people and musicians.
For this album too that you've just released, it began by diving back into the archives, right?
Actually not. So this was the idea for Quantum Gate. We recorded in since 2016 or 15, and it was released around September 17. So this time we create the music all by ourselves, but had the opportunity to morph melodies and single lines like arpeggiators from the past, from Edgar, into our arrangements. It's a strange thing because things like Melodyne, it's a software program where you can adapt even polyphonic material to newer material and can change even a single note inside a chord or a musical texture. So you can adapt this kind of music into other music. So you don't have to play on existing material, but can sculpture um, the the music of Edgar to our into our arrangements and compositions. And we did it on 3 of 7 tracks.
You create the music from your own musical personality first, and then you take little bits of his and kind of sprinkle it in there. Yeah.
Exactly.
What would you say the balance of analog to digital equipment to is in the way that you create music today?
Well, a good example is the violin, maybe, where
So there's no restrictions using just analog, digital, hybrid stuff, or even software. But I really, for myself, so I really like modular systems because I just do, moving knobs and patching cables into something because it's more haptic, it's more experience, it's more physical thing. But if it came at the end of the day, if you would use a software like the hardware, but I'm not so into using software instruments. So, but I can use hardware instruments from my perspective better. So, but at the end of the day, it's more important how it sounds, and I think it's not a big difference to use digital software emulations or analog instruments, but everyone has kind of a view, kind of a the easiest way of getting the final sound you hear in your head, and the quest is to get as close to the sound in your head, and what you're using, it's not so important at the end of the day.
So you hear the sounds that you want to achieve in your mind first. You can pretty much hear the songs.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first sound that you had in your mind for this album and the first sound that you were pursuing that kicked off this process for you?
So this is more a thing of 3 people or all people involved. So
I couldn't think of a specific sound. And for me, maybe it was a little bit different because, I mean, I'm new in the band and it's such an incredible legacy, and I had to learn a lot in the last years, and it's still an ongoing process. And because for me, I knew and still know way less about the history of synthesizers than these two. So to me, to discover a new instrument definitely gives me ideas. And I think it's true that sometimes you can have something in your head, but definitely I would think that an instrument also does something to your ideas. And so for me, like trying out Thorsten showing me all these old synthesizers that he has in the studio, and like some that even I guess I could never afford, and to see what comes out, that sometimes made me play things that I wouldn't have played on my piano at home, things like. So I think it's definitely a mutual relationship between performer and instrument in a way.
You were saying there that you've learned so much since being a part of this band. What do you think is the most valuable lesson you've learned in the last year or so since joining the group?
The most viable?
Yeah, valuable lesson.
Valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer. I think, first of all, I still had to discover many Tangerine Dream albums because I didn't know them all, and not even the majority at that time. No, but I can only answer like more on an emotional level, that I learned to trust in the fact of making music together, us three. You know, that's like the most. It's, I think, to me, the feeling how safe and how even how welcome and so on I feel in this constellation is probably the biggest thing.
This album is called Ram. Is that how you pronounce it? Ram. Yeah, as well, which means space in English, translated.
But also room. And
Also room.
yeah, and it could, the realm it could be translated as space and realm and room, but also the space between things.
Well, that's sort of what I was thinking about. Is how would you describe the importance of that in the mix and when working on a song, on this album in particular, perhaps?
Yeah, it definitely fitted well to the idea that we want the sounds to breathe and to have some space, have some room. Then it obviously slightly alludes to Zeit, the classic Tangerine Dream record, though it's definitely completely unalike. There's something about the spirit and the freedom of it that we wanted to feel, but you definitely cannot compare these albums. And when we started, we had actually rented a pretty typical rehearsal room in order to start the process. So in our everyday life, it was also a bit like, when are we meeting in the room? You know, so it just became a word that stood for the process.
It became emblematic of everything that was sort of you wanted to represent in this album. When you come upon a concept like that that feels like it unifies this, does that change the direction you're taking with the record, or does it change how you're driving it and moving forward with it in any way?
So we are waiting for some moments. So we had this room for composing and making sessions and get a feeling for things. So it was a kind of a progress and process to find the sound of and the idea behind the album. So it was no big plan before, but it was sculptured after some 2 months, maybe 8 weeks. Therefore, kind of show the path to the final result. But we had to find it. So there was a kind of a process of 3 people composing music, and with every character and every personality involved.
I think you hear that in the album too. You know, it's very organic and free-flowing, and it kind of moves into these new spaces in a very free-feeling way, which is perhaps representative of the process that kind of.
Thank you
like you say.
for this. This was a plan.
In your years of making music, have you found, are there any catalysts that are always good for inspiration, that always inspire you and can spark new ideas?
I think this is a very general thing. So everything every experience in your life, every book you read, every TV show, documentary, movie, every kind of painting gallery you visit, I guess has an impact of you and the feeling or the mood when you go to the studio the day after. So it's an everlasting process. But it sounds very, you know what I mean. But no?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I would also think like that to filter everything. But I think the most brutal catalyst is always the stage, with this elementary fear of making yourself ridiculous,
Yeah.
you know? And because in a studio you can in a way have many tries and you can throw it all away and and I guess some of what you learn on stage you may later grab that feeling and have it in the studio as well. But I think this, like, I have enough memories of like panicking or also like, for example, playing a session so you don't know what it's gonna become and you have to let loose, and if you become too afraid you won't find good ideas. So it's about of overcoming that fear and the simple fact that maybe people, if they realize that you're bad, that they will laugh about you.
It's absolutely so it's a situation without having a Control Z button. Yeah. No undo function.
You need a little bit of fear sometimes to spark creativity. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you for.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for the good
Thank you.
questions.
No,
Was,
thank you. That was a pleasure. Thank you.